there's a little bit of time before the next big event starts, so that gives me the opportunity to look at a couple of games that simply caught my eye. And this one is between two English players, David Howell with the white pieces and Keith Arkell with black. So this is a clash of two different generations. David Howell was born in 1990. He's about to be 25 years old and is enjoying a really good run of late. He's just crossed over the 2700 barrier, and well, he's making great progress. Keith Arkell, a fair bit older, but he has also had some good results recently. He came equal first in the Vienna Open, and it's great to see him playing so well in his 50s. Let's take a look at their game. This is played in the Isle of Man Open in October. So Keith has played the French defence, an opening I like very much, and here Keith decides to play the so-called Fort Knox variation. In my DVD on the French that came out earlier in the year, I was advocating the classical variation. I often think that this gives black very good counter chances on the queen side. But as a second string, I was also advocating this Fort Knox system. So the idea is that black is able to develop this bishop very quickly on the long diagonal, and you have a very solid pawn formation on the king side. One of the great advantages of this system is that you can play it against 3 knight c3, but also against 3 knight d2. So if you want a kind of a little break from your main systems, this is really not a bad idea. Howell develops his pieces normally, knight to f3 and bishop d3. Knight d7 from black, so that prevents white's knight coming into e5. Castles, everything normal so far. A knight f6. Here, the main move is knight g3. When I say the main move, it's the most popular choice in this position. But Howell plays something that's, well, it has been seen before, and it's an extremely dangerous move, because in playing knight g5, white gives himself the opportunity to sacrifice on either f7 or e6, and black has to be extremely careful. Let me give you a couple of examples. Well, for example, if black carelessly plays h6, then white can take on e6. This rather reminds me of the final game in the match between Deep Blue and Kasparov, where Kasparov lost very, very quickly in a similar way. That came from Makara Khan, but it's the same motif of sacrificing on e6 and bishop g6 was played there. And this gives white an absolutely tremendous attack, because you can see black simply can't activate his pieces in this position. That's an absolute bargain. Bishop e7, as Keith Arkell has played before, and he managed to win, but actually this is also very, very dangerous. White has a tremendous attack, in this case sacrificing on f7, and knight takes e6. So white has 2 pawns, and c4, d5 is probably going to happen very quickly. I mean, you can see that black's pieces are really bottled up. He has to waste a move shifting the queen to the side, and this is highly unpleasant for black. So black has to be very careful. Keith played bishop d6, and I think that's the best move in this position, because here, if white attempts to sacrifice on f7, this is very different, because in this case the c7 pawn is protected by the bishop, and after, say, rook e1, well, that can be pinned, and black is going to free himself with either knight f8 or bishop d5, maybe queen f7. Basically, black is fine in this position. So white has to wait for the moment, rook e1, but that, of course, increases the pressure on e6. And here, well, I think Keith probably got it wrong. I'll come back to this position and we'll examine what black should play here. But let me crack on with the game. Here, Keith Arkell took on f3, and then queen takes f3. Now, very often this exchange does take place in order to follow up with c5, attacking white's centre, breaking down white's centre, and sort of bringing that knight into the game. That's a very common strategic idea. Here, of course, well, if castles, then queen takes b7. I mean, this can still be played. c5, I mean, it's actually a reasonable pawn sacrifice, but okay, it should be better for white. And here, if c6, then queen h3 is a very unpleasant move for black to deal with. Of course, castling is impossible because h7 would cave in, and there's already a threat to take on e6. I mean, knight f8 probably has to be played here to defend e6, but that's absolutely miserable. I mean, white will just develop, and great position for white. Arkell played h6 here. That's a provocative move, and that's an understatement. Howell took the plunge and captured on e6 with the knight. You could even play rook takes pawn here, and this is extremely dangerous because, of course, queen e7 would be met by bishop g6 check, and the queen has gone. Highly unpleasant. Well, Howell decided only to sacrifice a piece, and this is also absolutely devastating for black. If king f8, then bishop g6 keeps black completely bottled up. You can see the rooks simply can't get into the game, and it's very, very difficult to drive away white's pieces here. Arkell played king f7. Bishop c4, threatening an unpleasant discovered, so the king has to go back. And now queen f5. Very simple idea to play queen g6 and to come in on the light squares with some kind of threat of mate on f7. Knight b6 was played. And here white has played it very simply, just bringing the rook into the game. You can see that black, although black is a piece up, in fact he's kind of playing two rooks down because they simply can't join in the game, and well, white's pieces are so well coordinated that in fact this is really easy to play. As long as you don't panic with white and don't rush it, everything's fine. For instance, as queen takes pawn, well, no problem. Just bring the pieces into the game. I mean, that's actually resignable in this position. Arkell tried c5, but this got taken. Didn't really help matters. White, of course, avoids an exchange of queens. And here, well, I dare say rook e1 is possible, but Howell finished it off very nicely with this further sacrifice. Of course, if the king goes backwards, then, well, in that case, there's actually queen f7 mate. I mean, I was going to say queen takes rook. If the king comes here, there's also rook checks. So the king has to come forward, basically. And this rook is just waiting to come into the game to deliver the final blow. Let's see exactly how David Howell managed to finish the game off. So the king is lured forward. It's not quite as nice as Wei Yi's game, the famous one. But, well, it's very nice. It's much simpler. So threatening a mate with bishop e2. And this comes anyway. And that is game over. Queen d3 is checkmate. Well, it's always fun to see a king march. Very nice. But in a way, it wasn't too difficult for Howell to play that. Let me go back to this position. So bishop d6 has just been played. Definitely a good move. Rook e1, this is very dangerous. And here, Keith Arkell exchanged on f3, we've just seen that. But a much better move is to play h6 here. I don't want to leave you the impression that the Fort Knox has been refuted. I can assure you it's a very nice system to have up your sleeve if you want to just wheel something out that's kind of unpretentious, gives you a solid structure. First thing to note is one must always examine the piece sacrifices, and here this one simply isn't as good. So let's say bishop g6 check, and in this case we can knock the rook back, and after king g8, well, black is going to play knight f8, driving away the bishop, and slowly black will be able to untangle. There's also sometimes bishop f7 as well. Black is fine in this position. So knight h3, this has actually been played on a few occasions. And here black would simply like to castle. But after knight e5, that's a bit annoying. When black takes, then the queen is ready to come to g4, and those bishops are very dangerous in combination with the queen. So in this position, after knight h3, it's best to exchange off on f3 straight away. Now this is rather different because in the game continuation the knight was on g5, but here it takes time for the knight to redeploy itself. This has been played before, and black played c6 and castled, and this was absolutely fine. Let me just show you a few more moves after this. Well, black's kingside is actually very solid here, and after this black started to get his queenside counterplay going, and actually there was no danger on the kingside with the bishop on g7 protecting the dark squares, and well, black is ready to play queen b6 and get some counterplay. Black was fine here. But an even more dynamic continuation in this position is just to castle. Allow white to take on b7 and then hit out with c5. And white finds it very difficult in this position to control what's going on in the centre, as well as bring his queen to safety and redeploy the knight to a better position. So this offers black very good counterplay, very good compensation for the pawn. There you are, the Fort Knox variation. It's not dead yet by a long stretch. And if you're interested in the details of that opening, then do check out my Power Play DVD, A Repertoire for Black with the French Defence. Thanks for watching.